So I'm going to talk about this one first because it's one of my absolute favorites, and it's also relatively new to the collection, so it hasn't been on display yet. And it's wonderfully pictorial, so if you want to zone out to my voice and just look at the wonderful pictures, then you can also do that too. I think it's great, it's so theatrical, and that's what really attracts me to this piece. We don't actually know the maker for this one, but we're presuming from the centre that it must be of Scottish origin because of the Scottish crown jewels in the centre, the thistles and the coat of arms. So we've got a lovely Scottish theme going on in the centre. And then the rest of it has a real theatrical feel to it. So the kind of swags and the pillars makes me think of a theatre, a Victorian theatre with their really heavy red velvet curtains. And then we have these wonderful characters, and there's just so much movement in the piece. It's full of action. All these characters are just waiting to kind of pounce out and leap into action, which is fantastic. A lot of these characters are recognisable. So we have George fighting the dragon, we have Harlequin and Columbine, we have a fox hunting scene at the top, and then we have lots of other characters in various different action poses. These would have been taken from the lithographs and printed pamphlets of the time. So this has been made probably between about 1840 and 1860. And it comes from a genre of pieces where male tailors and male exhibitioners were making these pieces. It's definitely made by a man. It's very masculine in its style, which is quite unusual for us in terms of the majority of our pieces we presume are made by women. So this is primarily an exhibition piece. It's not made to go on a bed like a domestic piece. It's not made to be viewed flat. It's made to show off the skills of the maker and to probably be exhibited somewhere. So in the 1851 Crystal Palace Great Exhibition, there were a good number of these which were specifically made and exhibited. Some of them were very specifically catalogued, and you'll find those descriptions in the catalogues from the 1850s. And they were described in great detail. They described how many thousands of hours it had taken them. Some of the makers had spent literally decades of their life making these pieces. And what makes it so special as well is that it's an inlaid patchwork piece, which means it's not applique, as you may think from just looking at it. It's actually pieces that have been inserted into the background, a bit like marquetry or like a jigsaw. So if you imagine a perfect hole and then something which slots directly into it, that's how it slots into the background. So a kind of collage, everything's cut out and fits directly in with the most minimal of seam allowances. So possibly like 1 to 2 millimeters on the back. So they use felted or worsted wool so that there's no fraying. And then it slots in and then it's decorated with embroidery on top to add those extra details. So you can imagine that's an incredibly specific and very, very skilled way of doing it. It's ideal to use fabrics that don't fray, so that you don't have any of that to deal with. And what it produces is a very flat piece with no kind of bumps. So with a lot of other pieces, you would expect a seam allowance. There is no seam allowance over any of this because it's just neatly slots in together. So the skill level is just off the chart. It's amazing. So it's a really beautiful piece. It's also quite reminiscent of the kind of toy theatres of the late 19th century as well. So some of these characters that you find here were then reproduced and made into children's toy theatres, like Pollock's toy theatres, which some of you might have seen before. They're on little cards and you make the little characters move in your own plays. So it's just such a wonderful piece with so much movement. The only other character to point out is the clown in the corner there. That's Grimaldi the Clown, and he was a very specific character made very famous in the Regency period in the 1820s. And he had his own costume and his own makeup, and that kind of was then copied by other clowns as it came along. So he's quite a famous, well-known character. And there are so many other characters in there that people have been coming and telling me which ones they represent or that they recognize certain ones. So there's certainly a lot of different bits of research still to be done on this piece, but it's definitely one of my favorites. This piece we actually purchased, so quite often most of our pieces are very kindly donated to us. We do have a limited acquisitions budget, and we look out for pieces which are different. Quite often auctions go very high. Quilts are quite desirable, antique quilts, and they do go for very high prices. The reason that we managed to get this one is because it was miscatalogued. Obviously now everything's on the internet, you just have to type in a keyword and everybody knows about it. it was miscatalogued as a folk art panel, so there weren't the words of applique, quilts, patchwork, not featuring at all. So someone spotted it, and it kind of flew under the radar a little bit, and it went for a price that we could actually afford, which is quite rare. So we were able to get this piece, and this is the first piece of inlaid patchwork that we got in the collection. So yeah. So the next one I'm just going to talk about here is our Path Through the Woods quilt, and I love this one so much. I was saying that, you know, quite a lot of these quilts are contrasts. So we have Pauline Burbage, who is our professional quilt maker. We have people who make money from quilting or do it for a living. But we also have people who it's their first time quilting, or it's one of the first pieces they've ever made, and they might not necessarily have ever had any lessons, been taught it, or anything like that. And I think it's just a great way to show that patchwork and quilting is for anyone who just wants to have a go, which is also kind of our guild ethos as well. It's kind of everything for everyone. We just, you know, it's all inclusive. So this piece was made by a lady called Margaret George, who then got married and was Margaret McGregor. This was actually the third piece that she made. The first two pieces were hexagon pieces. But she made this in the 1960s when she was a teenager. And she had fallen in love with a hexagon, a small miniature hexagon patchwork, which her auntie had made for her doll's bed. And she absolutely loved it. She loved the way the colours worked together and how it looked. And she wanted to give it a go herself. So she collected all the scraps together from her mum's scrap bag, from her grandma. And she said she didn't really get much guidance from her mum. Her mum did a lot of sewing, but it was really a practical thing. So she made dresses and curtains, and it was more of a kind of, I need to repair this and I need to make children's clothes, and it was a little bit more of a chore than it was a pleasure. So she kind of cracked on with it and did it herself and just kind of taught herself how to do it. So she did the hexagons, she did 2 hexagon pieces. So she did the hexagon tops and arranged those together, but she had no idea about quilting because, of course, they're 2 separate crafts, really. So they got an Avril Colby book and they worked out how to do it, but it didn't really mention much about the quilting side. So they did the hexagon top, then it got abandoned because she didn't quite know how to quilt it. And then she did the second hexagon top with a bit more arrangement this time rather than completely random hexagons. And again, wasn't quite sure how to finish it off. And then her neighbour gave her a sample book. It worked for some kind of department store or some kind of one where they had a sample book left over. And she was given a linen sample book, which is what this is. So you can see all the beautiful shades of linen there. And she says she remembers being given it quite early in her teen years and just arranging it in all the rainbow shades because they just look so beautiful. And then she decided she wanted to do something with it. And she had a book called Path Through the Woods, by Barbara Kerr-Wilson. This is the front cover of the book. And it was a time-traveling book that also featured quilts, which sounds like an amazing story. And it was her favourite book. And she loved the flower, the Dresden plate flower on the front. So she wanted to copy that. So she created that herself, just from fabrics, leftover dress fabrics and skirts and things that they had in the scrap bag. And then also used these linen pieces for the rest of the design, which, considering it was only her third piece when she was a teenager, I think it's just amazing. But again, she got to the point of having pieced it and then didn't know how to quilt it. So her mum took her to the local library and they got out a book on how to quilt. And then it mentioned, you know, constructing a giant frame and putting it all together. And her mum went, no, I don't think so. So they took the book back to the library and her mum went to the local department store and bought some pre-quilted fabric, which was designed to be bought to made into dressing gowns or bed jackets. And they put that on the back instead. So you can see just on the edge, some of that, it's like embroidered. And it was designed just to be made into clothing garments. And that was the quilted element, and they backed it and put it all together, and then it was completed. So the 2 first tops that she created remained hexagon tops for decades. And she went on and obviously did various different jobs and that kind of thing. And then she eventually got back into quilting and learned how to quilt. And then those 2 first hexagon tops, she then quilted when she was much, much older, decades later, and finally finished those off. So she kept them safe until she knew how to complete those 2 pieces, which I think is quite a nice story. I love the fact that it was somebody who just saw a picture and really wanted to do something, had absolutely no idea how to do it, and just kind of experimented and did it and did the best that she could. And actually, it's just such a lovely piece. So that's our Path Through the Woods quilt.